Dynasty Mystery Series. Yeah, the post-apocalyptic after-time series and thrillers for young adults, including hot off the presses, hanging by a thread. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sophie.
The first time I ever read at Litquake, I was a nice housewife from Danville with a book out, and I was writing about middle age and vengeance, and now I'm a surly ex-housewife, divorced and living in Oakland, and I just celebrated the publication of my 10th book. Which has led me to surmise that some middle-aged men don't really like it when women get real successful, especially if they're married to them. Just a little thing I was thinking about. And the other thing, the first time I read here I was talking about middle age because I was sort of new to it, but now I'm an expert. I'm 49 years old, and I've been doing it for a while. So I've had time to go a little further in depth, and my new thing is that middle-aged women aren't allowed to have sex. Well, they're not allowed to have good sex, and they're definitely not allowed to have a lot of it. If you look at, like, on TV, it's okay for middle-aged divorced women to find love, but they have to find, like, clean love, you know, like regular church love, and that's good. That's not boring. I indulge in that now and then, but, I don't know if I can sing well enough to do this, but let's give it a shot. So all you need to know, this is the 4th book in the series, and it's actually about a woman who, my friend David. Oh, he's offering me his reading glasses. I'm not quite as old as you, so I'll go with that. But that was sweet of him, don't you think? Thank you, David. There are gentlemen out there. Anyway, Stella killed her husband because he beat on her for 30 years, and then she starts a business helping other women who are abused. And she's got a crush on the sheriff because he's hot, but he's also busy. So she was jogging home from the store, and she ran into B.J. Broderson, who has a bar, and she invites him to dinner. Half an hour later, the taquitos were in the oven. Oh, I should mention, I'm from Missouri, and so is Stella. The onion dip upended in a pretty fiesta-ware dish, the chips mounded in the salad bowl, and Stella was fresh out of the shower and suddenly spritzed with white diamonds. She emerged from her bedroom to find BJ peering at the latest red book, a pair of half-moon specks perched on his nose. The gin and tonic Stella mixed sat nearly untouched on the coffee table. When BJ noticed Stella, he hastily snatched the glasses off his nose and stuffed them into his embroidered shirt pocket. "Those glasses look nice on you," Stella said, plucking her own drink, a neat slug of Johnny in a tumbler, off the counter and joining him on the couch. She chose a spot that left a foot of chintz between them. Far enough apart for decorum, but close enough, she hoped, to signal a world of potential. "Oh, now, Stella, don't be mean," BJ mumbled, ducking his chin down practically to his collar. Stella reached out before he had a chance to think and hooked a finger under his strong, bristly chin. She tipped his face up so his wide brown eyes were aimed directly at her, and caught her breath to note the equal parts of longing and uncertainty all mixed up in their depths. "But I meant it," she whispered. "Just about anything looks nice on you, BJ." After that followed one of those moments you wish you could dip in acrylic and plate with gold and mount on a stand with a gilded plaque with the date and 1,000 exclamation points. The kind of moment that even when you're in it, you know will be playing on the pull-down screen in your mind on your dying day. Here was a man who wanted her, who, unlike Goat the sheriff, offered nothing more complicated than a sweet, lusty romp, with maybe the potential for something even more sweet and uncomplicated to follow. "Yes, ma'am." BJ's hand traveled all slow-mo, like up to Stella's, and he wrapped his warm fingers around hers and drew her hand around his neck. She closed the distance with a happy little sigh, and when her lips landed squarely on his, she was only a little surprised at the rather generous and fleshy nature of his tongue, the funny way he patted at her waist as though he were shaping dough into a loaf, so unlike Goat, before a wave of pure animal lust came crashing from sources unknown, and Stella figured she'd just throw caution to the wind to go with it. Stella was very familiar with the contours and curves of her pink chintz sofa, having fluffed its pillows and vacuumed its crevasses for 1,000 times in the past decade, so she was able to drag BJ down on top of her with no fear of smacking her head on a sofa arm or dislodging a stray throw pillow. For his part, BJ seemed fine with the whole animal attraction approach and swiftly maneuvered a knee between her willing and pliant thighs. A nagging little voice in the back of Stella's mind whispered reminders of the way goats' hands, calloused and wind-weathered and strong as steel, felt when they tugged her hair or grazed a nipple. But even that voice dimmed as BJ's sweet, doughy lips trailed a pale path down her cheeks, under her ears, down her neck, settling with a happy sigh between her breasts. Firm, he murmured, giving her soft little kisses while his hands stole slightly over her hips, while they settled tentatively, almost reverently. Come again, Stella said contentedly, letting her eyes flutter shut and throwing her head back so her shoulder-length hair, recently colored a shade somewhere in the red side of auburn by her daughter, could spill luxuriously over the edge of the sofa. BJ lifted his head from her breasts and gave her a heavy-lidded gaze, his cheeks flushed dark with exertion, and Stella fervently hoped, lust. You're beautiful, he clarified before diving back into his happy task, and that gave Stella the extra assurance she was looking for. She put her hands on his and gave him a little push, willing BJ to surge past tentative to, say, willing and unstoppable, or at least untamed and demanding, or even needful and greedy. For one wild and headstrong moment, he slid his hands under her rear and squeezed, but then he retreated, his hands coming to rest once more in the no-combat zone of her general waist area, while he continued his gentle exploration of the valley between her breasts. Stella tried once more, giving his hands a subtle shove in a downward direction. But he resisted, adding a polite little moan, and a memory came unbidden into Stella's mind. Goat, here on the couch during a makeout session a few months ago. He had not been tentative, he had not been polite. He had been all wanting and taking and insisting, and the thought of the way he'd nearly thrown her down and grabbed great handfuls of her soft and willing flesh caused a moan of her own to escape her lips.